Good evening and welcome to the Town Council meeting of Monday, December 18th. It is 7:05 p.m. Would you please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Councillor Auclair.
Present.
Councillor Carrasco.
Present.
Councillor Clements.
Present.
Councillor DePietro. Councillor McKenzie.
Present.
Councillor Manna.
Present.
Councillor Morales.
Present.
Councillor Nash.
He's
Excused.
Councillor Steves.
Present.
7 present.
Thank you, Councillor Steves. Okay. Agenda item number 3, consider and accept the Town Council meeting minutes of December 4th, 2017.
So moved.
Second.
Any corrections, deletions?
You know.
Okay, I have one. It is on page 4 at the bottom, where it says, Mr. San Angelo said the town acquired the property for $1. We have not acquired. I believe he said will acquire or intends to acquire. He said we haven't acquired the land yet. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor? Okay, it's unanimous by present 7. Agenda item number 4, subcommittee summaries with the relevant minutes to be read at each agenda item. General Government, Councillor Steves.
Oh, I'm sorry. We did a joint meeting with Planning and Development. However, Councillor Claire took the minutes, and I didn't have a chance to print them. So would you mind reading them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Let me pull them up really quick. All right, so there was a joint meeting of the General Government and the Planning and Development Subcommittee in the Town Council on 12/13/17 at 6:30 in the Veterans Room. In attendance were myself, Councillors Clements, Steves, DePietro, McKenzie, Morales, Subcommittee citizen members Mike Marchetti, Joe Catronos, Jackie Ryan, Town Manager Ron San Angelo, Planning Director Ken Comia, David Smick, Paul Zotos, and Mike Boyne. The items that were discussed at that subcommittee meeting were to review the town manager's recommendation to appoint Michael Loyan of Southbridge as an alternate member of the planning board for a 3-year term effective immediately through June 30th, 2020. That's going to be on tonight's agenda, and I'm sure that we can discuss it at that time. Also, there were the two agenda items for tonight about the zoning bylaw for marijuana and also the regular bylaw for marijuana, and we'll discuss that when we, get down to there. There was also agenda item number 6 was review consultant contract for fire station facility study and design services as recommended by the fire station building committee if ready. Those were not, the backup materials for that were not ready yet, and so that will actually be postponed and spoken at a subsequent meeting. And then new business discussion was held about what to do with the marijuana question and whether or not it would be ethical to bring it back to vote. The voters voted in November of 2016 in favor, but a smaller voter pool voted against it in June 2017. Councillor Clements said she felt if there was a new referendum, it should come from the people and not the council. And we adjourned at 8:43 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clare.
Madam Chair.
Councillor Manning.
I'd just like to add to that, I was excused from that meeting. If that could be added to those minutes, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
I forgot to mention that when I got there. Sorry.
Say it again?
I forgot to mention that when I got there.
Okay. I will add that. Thank you.
Department of Public Works, Councillor DePietro. Do you have any meeting minutes?
Nothing to report, Madam Chair, as we have not had a meeting since my last report.
Okay, great. Education and Human Services is Councillor Nash. He is not here this evening. Agenda item 4D is Planning and Development. That again is Councillor Auclair.
And you gave your
That was
summary.
the minutes,
So
and we
we're
don't
good?
have any additional meetings scheduled at this time. Thank you.
Okay. And 4E is protections of persons and property. Council Manna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no minutes, but there is a meeting scheduled for December 21st at 6:30 PM. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Chairman's announcements. First, I have a question for the town manager. The firehouse staffing issue that I mentioned at the last meeting, did you look into that, or did you find out what the direction is going with that, where the direction is going?
So the answer, through you, Madam Chairman, is the answer is yes. Talked to the fire chief about it. He's looking at that right now, and he plans on bringing that discussion to the PPP committee shortly.
Okay. No direction as to why we haven't hired for the empty position that we've had since the fall?
No, I know he's in the process of looking at candidates and stuff, but I don't think, we haven't brought any for interviews yet, so I think it, frankly, he still has the list from last time, so I think probably we're going to get a candidate from his interviews last time.
Okay. I just know that's been a concern out there. Okay. And the only other thing I really have to talk about this evening is a request that I'd had in regard to the agenda item that we discussed last meeting. I was requested, and some of you know, by Councilor Clare to put to add an item that, quote, was discussion because of some new information, discussion on the Waterside Park again. And I declined putting that on the agenda because we had disposed of that issue in discussion with our vote. However, any issue such as that can be brought up again by standard parliamentary procedure, Robert's Rules of Order, and that would be in a motion to rescind. I was not asked to add a motion to rescind, but it does also not need to be added. A motion to rescind is in order at any time that there is nothing else pending on the floor, according to Robert's Rules of Order and general parliamentary procedure. You can find that in section 35. In my book, it's page 293. You can rescind or amend something previously adopted. We can debate it, we can discuss it, and we can then vote on whether or not to rescind something that we have previously adopted based on certain rules. Obviously, if we expended money already or it's an election situation, there are some rules that on items that you cannot rescind. However, what Councilor Clare was asking for could have easily and can still be easily brought up by a motion to rescind. It doesn't have to be the prevailing side. It can be anyone who chooses to bring up a motion to rescind, which would then spark discussion and a vote. So I just want those out there who maybe are not understanding of that concept or principle, that if somebody wants to make a motion to rescind, I'm happy to entertain that here this evening and discuss that again. So I just wanted to be very clear on that particular item. Councilor Clare?
Can I respond to that, please? Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, the proposal is changed in a matter of ways with, you know, Chip Norton giving...
Are you looking to make a motion to rescind so we can bring up the discussion?
Nope, I'm not. I'm just commenting on what you just spoke on, and I'm explaining the difference between the motion that I'm trying to bring to the floor on Wednesday night versus 2 Mondays ago. So
it's not in order at this time. So if you would like to make a motion to rescind, we'll bring up discussion.
Why did you bring it up then, is my
Because
question.
it's chairman's announcements, and I'm explaining myself.
All right, I'll wait until Councilor's forum. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right. I would also just like to, because generally this is the last time I'll get to speak here tonight on this item, on these items, and certainly Christmas is coming, and I want to wish everybody, your families and all, a blessed Christmas, and I hope that the holidays keep you safe and that the new year brings you lots of prosperity and wonderful things in your life. So thank you, and I'll move on to town manager's announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Just one announcement. The Firehouse Building Committee has selected the firm of Castle Bowes to do the conceptual design, feasibility study, whatever we might want to call the study that the board voted for. It was very interesting. We actually had 5 extremely good presentations, information that we got. We interviewed 4 candidates and felt that Castle Bowes was the, I forget the exact term that was used, but the most professional the gold standard was what it was referred to. They did a great job in their presentation, and they were selected out of a very high quality group of architects. So we are going to be moving forward with the next week or two. We'll be working on putting together an actual contract. I had emailed Councilor Steves that as soon as we have the contract in place, we'll notify his committee so this committee can post and do a meeting. It depends upon how quickly we can turn the contract around, but I would expect within a week and a half or so you should have that.
I'm just curious, should that go through me or should that go through PPP?
The contract itself is, I think, the general government kind of contract. While you're right, it's specifically related to PPP in that building, I think it's a general contract in nature. I would suggest that it probably is better at general government. Okay. The only other announcement I want to make, like the chairwoman, this is our last chance to wish all of the citizens of Southbridge a Merry Christmas. And to the board, I want to wish you all a very nice Christmas and a Happy New Year. And to all the citizens who are watching, we wish you and your family a very happy holiday. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 7, swearing in and presentations. We do have a presentation this evening. It is the consultant overview of zoning bylaw update project, the scope and the plan by Daphne Politis, AICP Principal for Community Circle. Welcome. And thank you for coming out. It's a chilly evening, and we appreciate you doing this for the community.
It certainly is chilly. No, not tonight. This is just an introduction. In following presentations, we'll need a screen. Thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me to give this overview. Madam Chair, members of the Council, Town Manager. It's really actually my pleasure to be here, even though it is very chilly. Because we've just started this process, which we consider to be very important, and we wanted you to know what we're going to be doing and what we have done so far, because we'll be meeting with you again, and we'd like you to be part of this process, as it is so important that we have this communication back and forth. So my name is Daphne Politis. I'm a part of the consultant team that's been hired to do this review of your zoning. Judy Barrett, who is my partner in this project, was unable to be here, unfortunately, and she is the lead in that she is a zoning specialist. Judy is a town planner. She's done zoning revisions, total revisions, for about 30 municipalities, and she's done slight revisions or tweaks, if you will, for perhaps 50, all in New England, primarily in Massachusetts. So in addition to being a housing and economic development specialist, zoning is really her thing. And she's also had some involvement in the Southbridge Economic Development Plan that was developed last year. I'm also a town planner. I'm a facilitator and a moderator. And I was involved in the development of the master plan. I led that, and I was also part of the economic development plan. So I do know something about Southbridge, if I may say so. I work a lot in integrating stakeholder involvement in the planning process. So what that means is that I try to make sure that stakeholders' concerns and desires are part of the process and part of the ultimate product that we give you back. In other words, make sure that it's what you want, make sure that it turns out to be what you need and what would work best for you. So really it's about a lot of listening and documenting and then making sure it's part of the final result. I've worked with Judy on several of these zoning revision projects, as well as master plans and economic development plans across the state. I've worked with many municipalities in Massachusetts. So that's to introduce the team. To introduce the process, what we'll be doing is primarily looking at your zoning with two lenses. The first lens is to look at it just as a set of regulations. Now, many or most regulations develop and evolve over time. So it's not uncommon for there to be inconsistencies or contradictions, or just it's not that easy to read because it gets longer and longer as time goes on and it gets amended. So really, the first thing is what we call a zoning diagnostic, which is look at it and see, is it clear? Is it easy to use? Are there any contradictions? Does it meet state law? Because over time, these things change. And if we're looking to see, to attract investment, if someone comes to town and looks at your regulations and sees that they're not up to date, they're not easy to use, what you're asking for is not clear, they're not as likely to make that investment because they want the predictability. They want to know what it is that you'd like, where you'd like it, and they want it to be clear. So one way of sort of combing through and making this up to date and clear is to be more attractive to investors. The second lens that we use is we look at the recommendations that have come out of your 3 most recent planning efforts: the Urban Renewal Plan, the Master Plan, and the Economic Development Plan. Now, those plans make major recommendations for which in some cases, and again, this is not uncommon, your zoning does not promote those. Your zoning is not a useful tool to implement those recommendations. It may be, in fact, an obstacle. So what we'd like to do is take a look and make sure that the zoning is aligned with those goals. And Massachusetts happens to not be what we call a consistency state. I just finished doing a master plan recently in Kittery, Maine. That's a consistency state, which requires that when you do a master plan, you make your zoning align with the master plan so you can implement it. Massachusetts is just working on that now, so it's up to the municipality. So you're really actually quite progressive in doing that, because if you don't, zoning is the #1 tool to implement those recommendations, which were developed with a lot of public input. We told the public, tell us what you want. This is what we came out with. Now this is the tool that you need to sharpen so that you can have those, you can make those things happen. So the first step is kind of a two-pronged approach. While Judy is looking at doing the zoning diagnostic, making sure that it is up to state regulation, it's clear, it's consistent, it's not repetitive in ways that you're not sure, do you mean this or do you mean that, kind of tightening it up. I was busy talking to stakeholders I met with 27 people, I believe, that were a wide range of people, a couple of familiar faces on the council here, as well as developers, real estate agents. Let's see, there were Zoning Board of Appeals, Liquor Board, Planning Board, a wide range of people. So I wanted to just give you a few highlights. We're going through now and very carefully distilling what it is that we heard, and then using that to add to the diagnostic of the zoning. So in other words, if people said to us the definitions in this particular area are difficult to use, we go back and we say, well, let's see, how can we make that clearer if people are having a hard time with that? So I just wanted to tell you a few things, just and soon there'll be a website that's connected to the town site where we'll be posting all of our products so you can see, and all of these notes will be up there. Perhaps this week? It's already up. There you go. So in terms of the positive features, what do people like? Well, people really like the table of uses. And believe it or not, some zoning ordinances do not have a table of uses. It's all words and it's very difficult to use. And people did recognize that that was very useful and that they could usually find what they were looking for in that table. They liked that it was online and that it was searchable. So those were sort of the key conceptual things that people liked. In terms of what's missing from the bylaw or what people felt needed improvement, there were many definitions that people felt, well, just in fact, actual uses, right, that are missing because over time new uses come into being useful, popular, and they're missing because they just weren't a use before. And one example I like to use a lot is food trucks. Food trucks were not really a thing in the past, but now people want them. So do you want them? Do you not want them? Where do you want them? We need to hear from you so we can include them or not. A better definition of abandoned property. So you do have this blight bylaw now, but how do we find abandoned property? And then what do we do if it's abandoned? In-law apartment versus two-family. That seems to not be clear for some people. Industrial, light industrial versus heavy industrial. You have a lot of land that's zoned for industrial use. Well, in some cases it's light and sometimes it's heavy. What exactly does that mean? A lot of times the newer ways of dealing with zoning is talking about the impact it has rather than the use, because you can't possibly imagine all possible uses that might come, to you. So it's really about the impact. Is it going to be toxic? Is it going to be noisy? Is it going to bring a lot of cars? So you control by saying no more than this in this area, no less than that in that area. Home occupations, again, that's increasing in terms of the types of home occupations. We want to maybe think about the impacts. Does it generate foot traffic? Are there too many cars? And agriculture and related businesses to the agriculture. Where should those be located? Should they be allowed across town, in certain areas? That's what we need to talk to you about. We need to know what is it that you want. The central core, I would say, received the most comments, the downtown. And the people had a lot of things to say about that. It was very useful to us when we look through now to see what does your zoning give you in terms of opportunities to do the things that you say you want, and where is it an obstacle? And how can we make it a better tool? And then there are a lot of little things, like, for example, when a building burns down and it's discovered that half of it is zoned residential, the other half business. Well, then maybe we need to go through and clean up those zones so that everybody knows what their neighbor is going to do, and a potential investor knows what it is that you want in that particular area. So after we had a long discussion about what's missing and what could be better, I had identified the 8 key goals in the 3 planning efforts: the urban renewal plan, the master plan, and the economic development plan. And we had a long discussion about each of those 8 goals in terms of how the zoning does or doesn't support them, in terms of what people felt, and everyone thought they were still all relevant. The number one across the board, not one individual did not agree with this, the number one goal was retain existing and recruit new businesses. A lot of people talked about that, about being in the downtown, but not necessarily. Other places as well. Now, when all 27 people were asked to rank the goals, this is the order in which they came up, and I just wanted to mention them because no one said these weren't relevant anymore, but these are the order in which they came out as being most relevant. So as I said, retain existing and recruit new businesses, create an identifiable brand for the town, including redeveloping the gateways into town to kind of set the tone, start to change the reputation and the image a bit. Reclaim and repurpose the river, both in terms of recreational activities as well as housing in some of that industrially zoned land. Expand housing options. This took different kinds of directions. Some people felt that there was a need for more affordable housing. A lot of people felt there was a need for more senior housing. Promote art, artists, cultural and recreational activities, improve walking and biking, encourage the use of renewable energy sources and other sustainability measures, protect more open space, came 8th, last but not least. People felt it was important, but it came 8th. And promote more youth programming and recreation was added as it was considered missing to the list. So in broad brush overview, that's what we're doing, that's what we've done so far, that's what we've heard so far. Do you have any comments or questions?
Councilors.
Could you elaborate a little more on the timeline?
Yes, of course.
When the community should expect to, continue on?
So this was just put up on the web today, so you can go look if your pencils aren't sharpened. We will have a review of the presentation of the zoning audit, meaning we've gone through your zoning, we've identified areas that need improving, that need changing, and we come and show and share those with you either on January 27th or 22nd or the 29th. That's to be determined. And the public, of course, is invited. The public is invited to all of our meetings, but we especially want the public in this one where we start to talk about what's wrong, what could be better. And we also want the public at the end when we say, here it is, tell us if we're missing anything, tell us if we've got anything wrong. Then with the first zoning draft, once we've taken in all that you've told us, we come out with some recommendation about making changes to the regulation. And we present that in February 22nd. And we say, okay, this is our first cut. What do you think? Do you think this is, getting at it? Do you think we're missing something? Do you think we need to change something? In March, the end of March, we review the second draft. We take all your comments back, make revisions, and we come back. May 31st is the draft. where we say, okay, this is it now. We've done 2 rounds. We've listened to you. We've incorporated all of your comments. What do you think now? And then in June 28th, we continue that process where we refine just a bit more, because we want to make it just right. We want to get it so that all the details are just right. Because really, this is the #1 tool you have for shaping the town's land uses and for shaping the downtown's future and for preserving all that you like about Southbridge. This is your #1 tool. Your #2 tool would be your sewer and your water lines, but this is really it. So we want to make sure that we get it right for you. So we come back and forth. You tell us what we think. We tell you what we think. You tell us what you think, and we go back and forth until the end of October. This coming fall is when we give you the final product.
Anyone? Councillor McKenzie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, you mentioned something about reclaiming the river area. Would you elaborate on that again?
Sure. So both in all 3 plans, I wasn't involved in the urban renewal plan, but I was involved in the master plan and the economic development plan. We talked about the fact that the river, and it's not just Southbridge, many previously industrial and especially textile mill towns were using the river as a central feature and then turned their back on it when the buildings become abandoned. So a lot of towns that come back from that reclaim the river as part of their town. So rather than turning their back to it, they reconnect to it. And they reconnect to it in new ways. One of the key features is recreational use. So I don't remember where it is exactly, but you have level 4, I think it's called level 4 rapids somewhere, where they're the only one in Worcester County. Some of these things that are pretty unique and important for you to capture, for you to capitalize on. And then because there's a lot of private property along that river, it's not for the town to say, we're going to take that, but it is for the town to say, we would like that to be recreational use, we would like that to be housing. A lot of the upper stories of the mills could be utilized as housing, and that could make the river a more central feature, as well as revitalize that corridor, if you will.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Manna?
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And you talk about the mills, and I think that's the mills, the old mills, how they're being refurbished into loft apartments.
Into what, I'm sorry?
Loft apartments. And that is great if you can get a developer into your community and do such a thing.
So one of the things is that right now it's not zoned for that. So if there was a developer that would be potentially interested, they don't know that that's what you want.
Right.
Because if they're somewhere far away looking in fact, I after doing the master plan, I ran into a developer in New York at a conference who was doing that in Brooklyn. And I said to him, why don't you take a look in Southbridge? They have a lot of beautiful assets and opportunities. And then he wrote me an email much later saying, well, there's no zoning that supports that.
Right.
So no one would know that that's what you want. So that's one of the things, is we want to make sure the things that you want, the vision that you have, that it's reflected in your regulations, so someone knows that's what you want, where you want it, and the tool is there to make it happen. Right. That's kind of the whole idea.
Yeah, when you mention the mills, the refurbishment, I think of Worcester and Millbury and Clinton. There's a lot of that going on at the mills, but their communities have those investors going in and investing that money in their community. So that's,
and look at Lowell and look at Lawrence. I mean,
yeah.
if you want to see, all far down the line how it could look.
I mean, but you have to promote it to the investor. So, and that's the key. So
That's right.
I'm glad. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Steves?
Thank you for doing this, Daphne. One thing I was curious to kind of dovetail on what Councillor Manna just said. How would revamping the zoning make it easier for us to find people who would be willing? Because, for example, we've thrown around the idea of our Foster Street building needing redevelopment, but it would cost millions. It's essentially an old mill building. just like a lot of the other buildings in town, same kind of structure. How would revamping the zoning enable us to fund the kinds of big repairs at these kinds of places?
To fund them.
Or to be able to get it to, would it make it easier for us to get grants and things like that to fund them, or what?
Once you have, well, in order to get grants, first of all, having a master plan and economic development plan in place really helps with that.
Right.
Then if you do make your zoning align with those, that is another way to help to get a grant. To actually fund it, though, through the zoning directly, the only way I could say would be an indirect funding, which would be providing incentives through the zoning, so that you might say, if you want a particular location to have more development, you might provide higher density bonus or some other incentive to a developer so it could make it worth their while. But for the grant funding, having everything aligned, so you have the vision, the goals, and the tools aligned, the state really looks favorably upon that to give you grants.
In your experience with some of those kinds of old structures and zones, what can we do as far as zoning goes to make it possible to transition them to something that would be more low-impact development, more ecologically conscious?
So we have to look at surrounding uses and make sure that, there aren't incompatibilities. And I think that, there's a lot of discussion in all the groups that being elder-centric, senior-oriented, could be really, it's low impact, it's low fiscal impact, and it's also environmentally friendly. And you also have an aging population, and aging in place and even being a magnet for surrounding communities might be one way. We need to look at that a little bit more carefully.
All set?
Yep.
Okay, any other councilors? So just comment, I agree with you completely on the development of mills in the waterfront. Our Globe area with that whole Mill Street project, that has great access to the river there with the other vacant lot across the street, and the ability to maybe put in a canoe or kayak there and get off at the Crane Street area or such, somewhere downriver in that respect makes a lot of sense. I believe the
that's a great
fives
idea.
are in the big Y. They're in the farther end, I believe, of the Quinnebog, if I'm not mistaken. A little hard access, but I believe there.
But there's some way, I think, in.
There may be, yeah.
One of my colleagues did the open space and recreation chapter of the master plan. He actually went out there.
To find it.
And he found it, and he said that there was a way in.
So focusing on some of those
So that's
areas.
So that's sort of like not everyone would do that, right?
Right,
I mean,
right.
I personally probably wouldn't. But I know that my daughters would, and my husband probably. So that's for some people. But then there's the connecting to the downtown and making a more passive recreation that's more of a park or more of a kind of a gathering spot that would be for everyone that would be connected to the downtown. So that there are different ways of utilizing that river. And if you look at other rivers, that can really be a revitalizing force.
And we have our wonderful area over at West Street School, too, which I think is just not publicized enough, because that's a very, very walkable, beautiful path with wonderful tables, picnic tables and stuff for people to utilize. I just don't think we as a community have put enough emphasis into that area with signage and letting people know that that's so accessible. I only walked it for the first time last year, didn't realize that it was such a beautiful path down there. So, and it goes all the way out to Westville Recreation Area, which is another asset. So.
And that was one of our findings, too, is that you do have a lot of resources that need more publicity for people to know about them.
Exactly. Thank you. Councilor Claire?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Just speaking to that Riverside access, I'm down at West Street probably, either jogging or walking the trails, a couple times a month. It's a great little area. I think that if we could do more of that in other places in Southbridge that are a little more accessible and a little more visible, then, that we'd be able to actually reclaim the river in the way that's set out in the master plan process. And I want to thank you for all of your work during that, and also all of your work for this. I have a lot of respect for you, and I think that the master plan project is something that we've started to get better on focusing on and need to continue in order to turn this town around. And thank you for all of your work in that and all of your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank
so
you
it's
very
my turn
much
to wish
for
you
your
happy holidays. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to, all right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 8.
Madam Chair,
Counselor?
through you, I would like to make a motion to rescind the vote for agenda number 9 from regarding the Waterside Park. It's taken on December 4th.
Your second? So we have a motion and a second on the table. Pardon me? Excuse me, do you have something to say?
It's next.
Excuse me. The motion has been made. It's in order in any area as long as there's no other motion on the table or pending, so we will follow suit. So, excuse me, I'm going to ask you to please hold your comments. Thank you. Citizens Forum, for the record, was after the presentation, and that's exactly where it would have been. We now have a motion on the floor and a second. So discussion on the motion is to rescind the vote of December 4th regarding the Waterside Park. Okay. Discussion on this motion. Councillor Carrasco.
I think if we're going to do anything, I think we should be doing this with a full council. I think Councillor Nash had a lot of input in regards to this Riverside Park, and he had a lot of concern, and he was part of the discussion. I don't think this is something that we should be doing here tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Auclair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I asked you to put this agenda item on the agenda tonight, and you refused to put the agenda on this agenda item on this agenda tonight. That is the reason that we called a special meeting for Wednesday, and this should be discussed on Wednesday when we have a scheduled meeting to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you for your concerns, Councillor. Any discussion on rescinding the item? Councillor McKenzie.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I actually agree with Councillor Auclair. If we have a meeting scheduled to discuss this, why would we rescind it tonight and then have a meeting about it? I think if we're going to even consider rescinding anything, we should have the meeting first and then come back and see what we're going to do.
Councillor Steves.
I'll yield to Councillor Manna.
Councillor Manna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. Through parliamentary procedure, could you explain? Because I don't believe we already voted something and it was already voted on. I don't believe there can be a meeting on the same agenda item without the vote being rescinded and certain steps taking place. That's what we follow, Robert's Rules of Order.
Yeah.
Could you explain that?
Yes, I'll do my best. So under Robert's Rules of Order, you have the right to, there are two ways to take action in regard to motions that have already been taken and discussed and voted on. One would be reconsideration, in which the prevailing side on the evening of, or on the day of the vote that transpires would make a reconsideration and make an announcement for the next meeting that they would like to reconsider, or also they could give notice within a number of days prior to the meeting being published that they intended to have a reconsideration on the agenda. In this case, as a rescinding goes, you can give prior notice that if that's the agenda item you want, and I want to be very clear that the email I received was with the additional information Ron provided. Could you please add the Riverside Park to Monday's agenda for further discussion? It was not a question of rescinding or reconsidering, which was would have been out of order. It was for discussion purposes on an agenda item that we had already dealt with, had already disposed of by majority vote of this council. So now we have Robert's Rules of Order, which allows us, as I said, under Section 35, to rescind a vote. A motion was made by a councillor to rescind the vote. We are open to discussion on this subject. And I would also say that in looking at the agenda item which was given to us today, this agenda item was not provided at the time in which the meeting was called by 3 councillors. which is perfectly legal. I have no problem with them calling a meeting. We asked for an agenda because I had some concern with the thought as to whether they were just going to put a rescind on or what this meeting was about, and we were told that the agenda would come to us in time. It got emailed today. The agenda item, which is the agenda item starts the same with a vote to approve the park grant for the purchase and developing for recreation purposes a certain property known as Lot 2A as follows. And the beginning parts are very similar to the existing vote that we have, and then there becomes a couple of changes and additions. It says to be managed and controlled by the Department of Public Works of Southbridge, maintained by Southbridge Associates 2 LLC once completed. That's an addition that is in regard to Mr. Norton's offer to maintain the park. And the town manager be authorized to file on behalf of Southbridge any and all applications deemed necessary for grants and/or reimbursements from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts deemed necessary under the Urban Self-Help Act 301 CMR 5 and/or any others in any way connected with the scope of this article, and the town of Southbridge and the town manager's office be authorized to enter in all agreements and execute any constructing a riverside park. And I want to point out that at that point, it changed. So the original vote was to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the manager, is authorized to borrow $335,674 under Chapter 44, Section 7 and/or 8C, and as of the general laws or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds. That one goes on for the borrowing process. In the new proposal, where it ends at Riverside Park, it then says that to meet this appropriation, $100,000 was previously appropriated to account number 648, Waterside Park Matching Grant Funds, on June 6, 2016, agenda item number 18, and the town council votes to appropriate $235,674 from number 6790 landfill royalties account to fund the remaining amount of the project. The monies will be returned to the landfill royalty account once the grant funds are received by the town. And on this one, it's listed as a roll call vote, and it does not list a 2/3 roll call vote. So we would say that the agenda item is significantly, some people might believe it's significantly different. I say that it's not significantly different, Councilor Manna, because we're still looking to create a park, we're still accepting land, and we're still appropriating money, albeit not from a borrowing source, but from rather a transferring source, which when you transfer money, we have always done a 2/3 vote on. So again, the source of the money is different, but it's still similar or the same. But regardless of all that being said, there's a motion on the floor for rescinding of this vote. Regardless of this, we are looking at a rescission of this vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
If that makes sense to me. Okay, so Councilor Steves?
And I also wanted to point out, you mentioned...
I think my hand was up first.
Yeah, but actually, these two were together.
I yielded to
And then
Monique.
yours.
I just wanted to point out, I believe that Councilor Carrasco a minute ago made a point about wanting to have us all here, but there's no guarantee all of us will be here on Wednesday. In fact, I believe Councilor Manna has said you can't be here this Wednesday. I don't know if that's true of anyone else. It also happens to be going to Christmas season, so I don't know. And also, I just wanted to point out that there was a couple of other points of those two agenda items that I noticed when I was reading them too. One of them is that the original version stated that it will not take effect unless the grant is approved by the state of Massachusetts. But the other one states that the money will be returned to the landfill royalty account once the grant funds are received by the town. And
Point of order.
Okay, sorry. You may state your point of order, Councilor Eau Claire.
Thank you. We are discussing the rescinding of the vote from Monday night, not the agenda item for Wednesday night. We're not having Wednesday night's meeting right now. Thank you.
Yes, I believe you're looking for clarification.
I'm looking for us to stay on topic, please. Thank you.
Well, I will rule that this is in consideration of what meeting is being called on Wednesday, and it does play a significant role in what is happening this evening as to whether people vote to rescind what was already voted on. Councilor Steves, do you have anything else?
No.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Clare, do you want to speak now?
I will, thank you. So the point of calling the special meeting for Wednesday was because the council chairman rejected my question to add this agenda item back for discussion for tonight. I've been explaining to people through the community and our fellow councilors that we will not be discussing this tonight because this agenda item was denied to be put on this agenda. You can't, you need to set expectations. You can't have a no and then tell people, okay, come Wednesday, and then start talking about it on Monday. It's entirely out of order. It's not fair to this community.
It doesn't make any sense.
And it doesn't make any sense.
Well, I know citizens...
Please hold yourself.
Citizens
Please
can
hold.
take it as-
I'm asking you to please be quiet.
I've been here for an hour.
Just please be quiet until people finish.
All right, I still have the floor, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to turn it over to Amelia Peliquin, thank you.
Well, that's not up to you, but thank you. Is there any other council who wants to? Councilor DePietro.
Madam Chair, out of consideration for the questions that were posed to the town manager in the presentation from Parks and Rec, I suggested, out of respect to the proponents of this agenda item, last meeting, that we table this. I didn't get so much as a second. That, and I believe that it does set a dangerous precedence. Council will have to do it once in a while when, in matters of urgency, or when something drastically changes on a vote. But certainly, I don't believe this particular agenda item deserves a second bite at the apple, especially due to the fact that the motion was put out there, and everyone that's all about it this evening wasn't about it a week ago. And we could very well be having this conversation from scratch this evening. I don't get it, what has changed. And again, I don't believe this agenda item deserves a second bite. All due respect to the proponents of it. Thank you.
Councilor McKenzie.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I have a concern that Rick Nash, who is a strong proponent and has some excellent input on this issue, is not here, and I believe that he's planning to cancel or shorten his vacation. Let me finish, please. To come back for a Wednesday meeting from Texas. If he were to change his plans, it would cost him a considerable amount of money to do so. I think it's extremely unfair to him and to the council to bypass that concept. I think we just should continue with a meeting on Wednesday, allow him to come and have his input, and anyone else who wants to come to the meeting and discuss it, and go on from there. Thank you.
I'm just going to your point, Councilor McKenzie, I did read an email from Councilor Nash. He will be on a flight. He's probably on a flight right now. He said that he planned on leaving Texas this evening after dinner. So I'm not sure what his plans were, or I won't debate that fact, but everybody has a life outside of council, and we choose how we travel and when we're here. And Councilor McKenzie, he told us quite some time ago he couldn't make this meeting, which is why Councilor DePietro, in my opinion, did not get a second on his postponing of the agenda item, although it could have been done. And out of respect to Councilor Nash last time, the vote went through. So that's just my response to your comments in terms of notification that he would not be here. He told us weeks ago of his travel plans.
Madam Chair, in respect to you, the reason that Councilman Nash is returning on Tuesday is to be able to be here to attend a meeting on Wednesday. He has he told me that he is cutting his visitation with his family short to be here for that important meeting. So I think that it's kind of like a put down to him and an insult to assume that he's had planned all along to come back on a Tuesday night to He only did that to be here for the Wednesday meeting. Otherwise, he would remain in Texas until the weekend. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. So, Councilor DePietro.
Madam Chair, all due respect to Council McKenzie, but this council acts as a body. If one of us or a couple of us are missing, life in council goes on. We cannot schedule around one individual or two individual councilors, in all fairness.
Okay. Councilor McKenzie. Oh, no, excuse me. Councilor Morales.
Yes, so I would just like to read a text message that I received earlier this evening. I'm not sure who it is. Quite honestly, I asked, but it just told me it was a concerned citizen. So I would just like to read, with tonight's meeting and upcoming special meeting on Wednesday, I want to thank you for your voting against the park idea. The town already has so many underutilized parks that the town has to pay to maintain and patrol to ensure no illegal activity. This park may be nice, green space, however, like all of the rest, will likely fall to the wayside. There's already a park next to the fire station, the town common, the West Street School, playground and Riverwalk at the Lower West Street Field, Westfield area that is utilized by many from the town. Eastford Road School, Playground, Plimpton Street, Playground, Main Street, Playground, Morris Street, Park and Playground, Capello Park, State Park, and Henry Street Park and Playground. I go to several of these parks all season and rarely see anyone using these spaces. This town has to maintain and pay to fix from vandalisms yearly. Having this park will not bring people from out of town. There's nothing in the area for out-of-towners to enjoy. People compare to Putnam, Connecticut, which is not even close. Putnam businesses include many restaurants, and the downtown activities that are successful are actually sponsored by these businesses, or clubs such as the Rotary Club, who contributes to the look of their park and puts on events throughout the year, not the town of Putnam. Most events that draw people to the area.
Excuse me. Could we have order, please? Councilor speaking. Could we just have order? And if you could step... Could you...
This is incredibly disrespectful.
If you don't... we're going to ask you to leave if you can't step back from the microphone and let us finish. Thank you. Continue, Councilor Morales. It's not the first time someone has asked us to read something, as we know.
Correct. Most events that draw people to the area, such as Fridays, are small business sponsored. We just don't have that in this town. It would be nice to have groups taking initiative and stick to it, but has not been the case. Lots of complaints and a lot of talk, but no one steps up to the plate. Most people I hear complain don't even pay taxes in this town, and it's petty and costly for those of us who have homes and end up footing the bill in the long run. Nothing is ever free. One way or another costs someone somewhere at some time. Thank you for taking time to read this. A concerned citizen who pays taxes. I asked who it was. They didn't give me that information, but I mean, I've received several calls, emails, text messages from citizens who are just not liking this park idea. That's why I decided to take the motion. I mean, it is what it is.
You all set?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilors? Councilor Carrasco.
My goodness. Here we are, the elected folks of this town. This motion could have been done at any given time. It is now 8 o'clock, and we decide to do it right before Citizens Forum. I just don't get it. I don't get it. This could have been done before Councilors Forum, before all of the 8 big mouths that are up here.
Do you have something to add, Councilor Carrasco, on the motion?
I have the floor.
As long as I allow it, yes.
Oh, for real?
If you're going to berate the councilors...
I'm not berating anybody.
Then please speak.
I'm talking. Can you allow my time?
You're advocating for the citizens.
Because I'm advocating for citizens. It's not fair We already went down this road on the first night you took over as chairmanship, where you wanted to move Citizens Forum to the end. It's not fair. When this motion could have been done at any other given time, we have citizens that have children that should be able to be heard. I just, again, now we bring this up, and technically, I know the rules. Now it becomes an agenda item. So now it becomes an agenda item, so citizens can't speak on something that's on the agenda.
Of course they can. Councillor Carrasco, let me state this very clearly for your point of information. I will let every citizen on this issue speak this evening. I'm asking the councillors to give us their information on this before I allow the citizens.
Madam Chair, point of order. What does this have to do with the discussion at hand?
Thank you, Councillor DePietro. I agree completely. I'm asking Councillor Carrasco to speak to the issue at hand, which is the rescission of this vote. If you're finished, I'll allow the citizens to start.
Oh, absolutely. I'll turn it over to the citizens.
Thank you. Okay, name, address, and you'll have 5 minutes.
It's not my first rodeo.
And keep it respectful, please.
I will. I promise. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Amelia Peliquin, and for the last 11 years, I've had the privilege of being a proud homeowner in Southbridge, living at 275 Marcy Street. For the past 5 years, I have had the immense privilege of serving this community as a municipal level elected official, completing a 3-year term on the town council before transitioning to the school committee in September of 2015. The work I do in Southbridge is not glamorous. When I ran for a 3-year term on the board in June of 2016, I ran unopposed. People on the Southbridge School Committee resign before completing their terms on a regular basis. Fixing our system to make sure it is serving all children, regardless of ethnicity, income, or disability, is going to take focus and dedication with years of engagement. Years. It's going to be hard, and I'm in it for the long haul, but I know how much this work takes out of people. It takes a lot out of me. I'm coming to you tonight with the radical notion that the children of our community deserve to have nice things. And as duly elected officials representing the interests of the people who live in this municipality, it's our responsibility to give them what they need. At the December 4th meeting of the Southbridge Town Council, the application for a grant for construction of a Riverside Park was voted down by Councilors Clements, Steves, Morales, DePietro, and Manna. I want to acknowledge the councilors who voted against this proposal. I know you have reasons for doing so, and I understand and appreciate your concerns. But as a resident, a local leader, and a mom, I need you to work a little harder now to do the right thing. There are so many children in Southbridge who are living on the edge. We have children in substandard housing, attending some of the lowest performing public schools in the Commonwealth, who will never have the opportunities that I was able to have as a child growing up in Southbridge in the 1980s. The very least we can do for these children is to go out of our way for them whenever the opportunity presents itself. It's the least we can do. This town as a whole deserves to have nice things. I understand your obligation to be concerned about the bottom line, but those concerns have been addressed now, and Councilors Clements, Steves, Morales, DePietro, and Manna, you are now presented with a wonderful opportunity to do the right thing for the community, and I urge you to change your vote. It's my mission in life to give Southbridge kids the world. The least you can do, and I know you can do it, is to build them a damn park. Good night.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
So, I'm anonymous. No, I'm just kidding. My name is Mike Marchetti, Southbridge resident. I'm also a member of the Redevelopment Authority. However, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Redevelopment Authority. I know that I don't want to take a lot of your time. I know that this is going to hopefully be brought up again Wednesday night I just wanted to add that I also support the park. I think it's a great idea. I think it's an excellent location. It'll help attract businesses here. Will it help the hotel? Yes, of course it's going to help the hotel. We want to help the hotel. We want to sell rooms in that hotel. We want to bring tourists to Southbridge. And I think that the town could easily raise the room tax at the hotel. I know that to pay for it. When I go to places like Boston and Providence, I pay a hefty room tax, and I don't mind paying it because there's a reason I want to go there. And I think Southbridge has a lot of good things going on here. I think I see it as a rebirth of Southbridge. I think if we start working on our history, bringing tourists here, bring them here because of our history, it would be a great thing. So I just wanted to say that I am in favor of the park. When I first got on the Redevelopment Authority, they gave me a book that showed all of their urban renewal plans, and one of them was a Riverside Park. However, it wasn't at the AO, it was down behind Tassie. However, that park was going to cost the town $1.2 million. So to me, you're getting a great deal here, and to me, it's a no-brainer. I don't see why we wouldn't go with this park here. And plus, what was recently said in the newspaper, that the hotel is willing to maintain the park and provide proof that there's no contamination down there. I think it's a great idea. Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For the record, my name is Dave Smick, 145 Ridge Road. And first, I'd like to talk about process and procedure. We live in a democracy, which is we the people are governed by our elected officials. And connected to that democracy and democratic process is the doctrine of majority rule. Whether we like the subject matter or not, I'm sure everybody in this room over the years, whether it was elections that people didn't agree with, we accepted it, even though it wasn't our choice. Same thing with major issues. I'm not happy with Washington, Boston, or even Southbridge on the legislative process and decisions that are made. But the majority rule is in effect. So the only legal way this subject can even come up again, I don't care if it's tonight, Wednesday night, is the motion to rescind. Council already acted. They defeated the water park issue for whatever reason, and there are people that have different opinions in this community. But the majority rule. Robert's Rules of Order are structured in the same way, but it also gives the minority an opportunity. And that opportunity is a motion to rescind. If the motion to rescind is successful, then the whole conversation comes up, and if you people want to change votes or anything like that, go to it. Now, to talk about the water park itself, personally, I think it's a great idea. I think the timing is wrong. And I'm going to be consistent. I said this at Subcommittee, that my concerns of this community right now, and have been for the last year, the financial condition. Now, to some people, and people that I've talked to in the last week and a half, is the optics of the issue. I'm going to use Marsh Ave, that little curled street across from Eastwood Road. Look at that road pavement. The people that live on that street are upset with the condition of that road. And every year, the response is, we can't afford to do it. So all of a sudden, if we can afford to do a water park, the optics to that person on Marsh Ave isn't too happy. Let's look up on Justice Street. How many years has those Jersey barriers been on that bridge? And we can't afford to fix it. The optics doesn't look good on the water park. And those concerns are valid. Now, I brought up at the subcommittee last year during the budget process, the school department took $1.5 million from the federal lunch program to offset expenses in the budget. If this coming year, if the school department and its expenses do not increase 1 penny and want the same amount of money, we're $1.5 million short. Now, in addition to that, I don't know if the charter schools are kicking in next year, and if that's another 800,000, it's 2.3 million. Where's the money coming from? And again, the optics with some of the financial problems that could be facing this town in the future, I don't think the water park is a great idea. So I hope I brought some clarity to the subject, but more importantly, the process and the procedure to me is the most important. We're a country of laws, and we have to follow the process, even though we're not going to be happy, or some of us are not going to be happy with the process at all times. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Councilor Clare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, just very quickly, just to respond, I think, to some of those things directly. I absolutely agree that the majority rules. This is, our government on the town, state, federal level. That's what the entire, country was founded upon. However, I think that for this specific project, there are some valid concerns, and I can empathize with anybody in the community that feels that taking $100,000 in this, that we've already allotted, but utilizing it for this project is, superfluous. And I understand that, and those are the types of reservations that I respect. The potential deal has changed, though, both with the offer to offer ongoing maintenance and also to do the environmental study ahead of time from any kind of P&S. And those are things that deserve to be discussed. And those are things that may or may not be a tipping point for certain people. And also, the funding mechanism has changed. So instead of borrowing money, we've found it in existing town revenues so that there is not going to be any additional, like APR financing or any kind of extra costs above and beyond what this will be for the allocation for Southbridge and Southbridge's portion of it. I think that those things, at the very least, warrant conversation, and conversation as a public body to discuss the differences. And when, I personally asked for it to be added to tonight's agenda, and I was told that it could not be. I know that Councilor Nash is somebody who, had some pretty good views about this Waterside Park and what it could do for the community. And I don't think that it's right to tell the community and all of the councilors that we will be discussing this Wednesday and then bring it up on Monday when specifically one person cannot be here. And also, there were definitely people from the community that were planning on showing up on Wednesday, and I don't think it's fair for them either, especially if their voice isn't heard. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All set. Councilor Carrasco?
Yes, I want to also reiterate something that Mr. Smith said, which I agree totally. For 4 years, we've been waiting for something to be done with Dresser Street. You are completely correct. We've paid for maybe 3 or 4 different engineering firms because that's what we've been told constantly, that we need a plan. And we've paid for engineering firms 3 or 4 times to develop that. So why hasn't that project been a priority? I don't know. It's just something that it's been for 4 years. So I just wanted to address that because I want to let you know that I do agree with that. But I think timing-wise, we have to look also the timing of this grant. Grants like this don't happen every year. This doesn't just come up. These are not, they specifically looked for a grant for a project like this. So timing-wise is we have an opportunity now to take advantage of, we're investing a small portion of money, which, yeah, we can take 100,000, but it's probably going to not get us a full road. We've heard that over and over again. I mean, we've talked about that over and over again during our budgets. Can we put some monies aside? Well, we've been said you're going to need more than 100,000 to build a road. So when we look at these mechanisms that are the timing, we have a grant presented to us. It hasn't been awarded. We don't know if we're going to be the recipient, but we want to do our due diligence to just be prepared if we are the recipient. And if we're not the recipient, because you know what? Now it's a discussion. You know, there's a lot of people talking. So, you know, whoever calls up the state, calls up those grant writers, calls them up, you know, that can also weigh in on their evaluation process. So if we don't have that money, if we don't get that grant, now we still have that money that belongs to the town of Southbridge, and we can reallocate it, we can repurpose it. It's not saying that this is the end of the day, but we are preparing for something that could be a potential revenue bringer, something that can really revitalize. I understand that they've mentioned several different areas of this river, but ask our police chief, do you want a Riverside Park secluded behind West Street? Do you want a Riverside Park behind Dark Horse Tavern over there on River Street where it's not open, it's not, I mean, I thank God for what they've just did at Capillo. They cut down trees because they couldn't see the skate park. So they made it visible. So again, if we're looking at timing and we're looking at these situations, I think time is of an essence. And I agree that majority rules, but there's been a presentation here by somebody that wants to invest in Southbridge. Yes, everybody that wants to invest in Southbridge has personal gain, bottom line. So yeah, Mr. Norton's going to give us a sweet deal because he knows that it's going to help him along the way. But that's business. That's business. And we as the leaders of this community need to think, okay, we don't do it today, that's fine. We don't do it on Wednesday, we lose that grant. Are we going to have department heads that are going to go after a grant after we, the council, just shut down their work? I mean, this is where I'm saying we have concerns. We're setting money aside. We're not spending it right away. We don't even know if we have it. That's what I don't understand about this project. It's not like we're going to set this money aside and we're going to spend it right away. No, we're putting it aside to see if we even get the grant. And then if we get the grant, now we know we're going to get reimbursed. We're going to get reimbursed. There's different areas. But those that want to suggest West Street, those that want to suggest behind Crane over there on River, let's ask our professional. Let's ask our police chief. He's in the audience. Is that a prime location, or does he prefer a Riverside Park in front of his police station?
Are you all set, Councilor?
Yep.
Okay. Any other councilors at the moment? Councilor Steves.
I would like to address a little bit of what Councilor Carrasco just said. You brought up the point of due diligence, and I raised that issue when we debated this issue last meeting, because that was one of the key points that I had with the fact that I thought it was a point that I was trying to do my due diligence with the fact that we have issues that we were raising that we didn't have documentation for to actually vote validly either way. And you can't vote yes if you do not have the documentation to do so. I'm not going to. Okay, so I thought it was interesting. We still don't have the document. You mentioned the environmental study of the project. We've been told that it exists, but we have still not seen it. Okay, we've been told that we're going to get this property for $1. We still haven't seen anything in writing. Okay, not having the docs to make a decision is not doing due diligence. And getting the information after we vote to shoot something down is, I would think, the antithesis of due diligence. When we suddenly get things thrown at us a couple of days after we've rejected something. That's contrary to the whole concept of doing your job in democracy, because it's already been done. And also, I'd like to point out that how is it due diligence to spend money on a project like this? And as I said before then, I'll say it now, I like the idea of doing a Riverside Park. And like with what Daphne said earlier about getting better access to the river and cleaning it up and doing stuff with it, I like the idea. It's a great idea. But doing this project now, when we know we'll need money in the next budget cycle, because some of the things that Mr. Smick mentioned a few minutes ago, because of some of the things we've brought up already, both tonight and previous nights, about the possible budget issues with charter schools and a whole bunch of other things coming down the pike. Granted, yes, $100,000 of town funds may not be able to do a lot of road repair. But if you do not have it, you may not, there are things if we've already spent it, we cannot put it to road repair. And that's one of the key reasons why I voted against it. Yes.
Okay. Councilor Leclerc.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Just to address some of what Councilor Steve said. I think this is a deal with a lot of moving parts. There's, pretty much the completion of the park could be on contingency of a completed environmental study, of the completed P&S. The moving parts comes in where, we're not going to get this parkland if it's not going to be used for a park. And the people that are going to give us the money to make it a park want to make sure that we have the land in order to make it a park. So I understand that, your expectations weren't met as far as documentation goes for some of these things, but this isn't nothing about this is any kind of final vote. There's obvious contingencies right in, the motion as written from 2 Mondays ago, and there are, other contingencies that you could add on top of that to suffice concerns. As far as a budgetary issue, I think this community got into a lot of trouble by trying to take one-time payments into the town and utilizing it for ongoing expenses. And throwing $100,000 at our budget problem is just going to be it's not even going to be an immediate solution. It's not even going to be a solution because we need to do things that are going to stimulate economic growth in this town. And, there are a lot of us that feel that this is on the correct path towards that. And we should be looking at the short term, we should be looking at the medium term, but we should also be looking at the long term as well. And I think that, those are all very important things, and I think that your concerns are valid, but we could be working towards a solution together, and we should be doing that on Wednesday. Thank you.
Also? Councilor Manna?
I have one question through you. What happens if we accept the land and the grant money doesn't go through?
It's contingent.
We don't.
It's according to what we've been told, because we did not negotiate with that, although that is part of our bylaws. According to what we've been told, that if the grant comes through, then Mr. Norton sells us the land for $1. And there'll be, I imagine, a write-up to that point, and I'm sure the town manager would like to elaborate on that.
I would. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do want to elaborate on a couple of points, and particularly the ones of Councilor Steves. I've answered question after question, and I keep hearing that I've not given out information. So let me make a few points clear once again. I would not spend money for a 21E study to give the environmental information prior to actually acquiring the land, because it would be a waste of tax dollars. Once we know if we get the grant, if we get the grant and we move forward, prior to the vote of the town council to actually acquire the property, because that has to be voted here at town council, the 21E study would be part of the town council members' package prior to that vote. The council has not been asked to vote on anything that they didn't have information on. The only vote that was voted on was to appropriate the money if, in fact, we get the grant. Now, we don't know for sure if we're going to get the grant. The owner of the property has said to us, if we get the grant, he will donate the land to the town for $1. He's made that public. He said it in a newspaper article. He said it at a meeting of a development that he was proposing along the riverfront. It just doesn't make sense to spend money for that purpose It will be spent, and it will, a 21E study will be provided to you before you ever have an opportunity to vote on the land. That's the process that we've used going forward. So I don't understand this issue of I haven't provided documentation. That was raised on the issue of the land being surveyed. That was surveyed already, and I gave you a copy of it. Again, we're not voting on the transfer of the land, so you now have this survey well before the vote because that vote has not ever been taken. I've tried my best to answer all questions of town council members. As a matter of fact, I went so far at the end of the general government council meeting where we're supposed to hash out issues, and if there's questions I'm supposed to answer them prior to the vote. I took the minutes of the meeting and went point by point by point for every question that was asked by every councilor, and I addressed every point before a vote at the last meeting. So to imply that I haven't provided information, frankly, is wrong. Even in the meeting that occurred between the two chairs early on, I was asked a series of questions. I did my best to answer those questions. Now I recognize that the chairs didn't like my answers, that they felt that I was wrong, and that's okay. But it wasn't from giving a lack of answers, it was the disagreement on those answers. I would still say this is provision that you voted on at the last meeting is odd. It's normally not the way this is done. Usually you get the grant and then you vote the acceptance of the money. In this case, the state said, before you get the grant, we want you to basically say, will you spend the money? It's an odd way that this process is being done. It's kind of been put out of place, but that's not my fault. That's the way the state set this up, okay? But we still have a critical vote. If ever this town council appropriates the money, this town council still has the vote to transfer the land, and you're going to want those couple of documents, which you will get before that vote, so you can make a reasoned vote on that. But everything you've asked for me that I can give you, I have given you.
Are you all set?
I am all set, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to ask you to refrain from putting innuendos in or statements such as, we didn't like your answers. The questions we asked in August at that meeting, because we went in for an agenda meeting and we asked a lot of questions when we received an email saying you had gone out for this park grant, the questions which you have answered just 2 weeks ago, we had a lot of questions and you didn't have the answers. So it's not that we didn't like the answers, we didn't get the answers. I'm going to finish with that because you're not going to put words and accusations as to how we spoke with you that day. We had a very nice conversation about the park grant, and we raised, actually Councilor Steves raised way more questions than I did. I had a few, and he had a whole list of them, and they could not be answered. And it was not until the state, which I really don't, asked for a vote on this, a legal vote on this, by us, that you then came to general government, which we asked the same questions, and then you prepared the answers that we then got just prior to coming to this council meeting. So I ask you again, just not to refrain from expressing what you believe was how we felt about something, because that's, I will not express how I believe you felt about your conversation with us. Okay. And that's all I'm going to say about this subject, sir.
And that's fine,
and I'm going to let...
but don't you, well, I think I deserve to be able to respond.
Actually, no, I think you spoke, and I'm speaking how I felt.
So you get the last word, I'm not allowed to speak?
Please,
Is that how this works?
Please, I'm asking you to please be quiet.
I want to make a simple statement.
Actually, I'm going to let Councilor Steves comment.
Thank you.
Because you brought up...
Sure.
Thank
you. And I would like to raise two of the things you stated, Mr. San Angelo. One is that you said you would not spend the money for a 21E study until the process is right. And I just wanted to point out, back in the previous meeting, you said that Chip Martin already had it. That's why I said we hadn't seen it, because I think if we're going to be buying a property that an existing study exists, if there's a study that exists on the property, then logic says we should be able to see it if he's trying to sell it to us. That just makes sense to me.
And the answer is you'll have it.
But the point is, where you are asking for us to commit to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for a project that we do not, that some people, myself and other people, have concerns about it even being an environmentally sound project to do. And the other point I wanted to raise is about the survey, which according to, when you sent us the version of the survey, which, according to the email you sent that had originally come from Will, is essentially a draft survey that had been floating around in his office since September. It's not even a complete survey, and the surveyors, from what Will's email stated, would not be done with it until January, if not longer, but certainly after this year is done. So that is not complete. I think we, to go back to the whole due diligence thing, it is due diligence on our part for the 17,000 people that we represent to do our jobs and make sure that we're basing our decisions on good information. If we do not have it, we cannot support it. That's just basic common sense as far as I'm concerned. Yes, thank you.
Do I get to respond to the questions that you put forward?
If he wants to, I don't care.
So thank you. Councilor Steves, I agree with you. I sent forward an email you to the survey, and the survey is not quite done. Yep. As you'll note in the email, it said there's a couple of very minor points that need to be added. Again, that survey, if you walk the property as you have done, you will see the surveying stakes that exactly define the property, as you guys pointed out to me. It's very obvious to anyone who walks the property where the lines are. The rest of the survey essentially is just a legal document that defines those lines in legal terms. That's all the survey does. You have 99.9% of it. There's a couple of minor changes to it that, again, you will get before you ever vote to transfer the property, is when that document becomes applicable, is because you are going to eventually have to vote for that transfer. You will, in your meeting prior to that, get that document, the last couple of minor tweaks to that document, and then you will have a perfect document in which you will be able to vote on when that transfer of land comes up.
Councilor McKenzie.
Yes, can we please move on? I think we've beaten this thing up quite enough, and I think it's now time to move on and make some decisions, okay? Let's move on.
Are you moving the question?
No, we're not, don't move the question. Let the citizens speak.
Thank you.
Kathy Lapriori, 51 Mark Ave. I would like to thank the town councilors who voted in favor of the River Park. They showed respect for the work that the town councilor put in, Steve Rowenfeld, no S in his name, and the person we actually hired to bring good things to town. We're paying money for this. That's pretty much all I wanted to say. But in June, I'm hoping for a much more respectful council chairperson. Thank you.
Jacqueline Ryan, 275 Marcy Street. For full disclosure, I am on the school committee and the general government subcommittee. So I was actually one of the 4 members to vote no on the original proposal. And I did so because I looked at all the facts put in front of me and all my fiscal concerns that have actually been laid out by Mr. Smick earlier tonight, as well as the concerns about environmental study, etc. That's what informed my final decision. Now, going forward, the government process has continued to work on this, and now we have a new proposal. And I consider it a new proposal. One that's, when reevaluating it, has given me the conclusion, and after my risk assessment, has put me in favor of the new proposal put forward. And the reason it's put me in favor of this proposal is the cost of maintenance, which was brought up as a concern, is now been taken care of, as Chip Nguyen has stated publicly that he will take care of that going forward indefinitely. I also have heard from tons of people on this. And I think it's important for all of us as elected leaders and as appointed leaders to reflect and consider all of that. And if I had to vote again on the current proposal now put forward, I would vote yes. And I think that this community, as has been stated earlier, deserves nice things. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jareen Allery, 48 Forest Ave. You have to forgive me, I'm a little nervous. Public speaking is not my forte. I usually choose to email you folks when I have something I want to say. Speaking of email, well, first I want to say I am very much for this park. Speaking of emails, however, when I emailed you folks months ago about a different topic, my name, when you brought up the email, was mentioned in the meeting as someone who had reached out to you. I don't know the rules of how these public meetings work. I've never studied that. But I find it odd that, and in no disrespect, that an anonymous text can be read into the meeting when we come here, have to get up and give our names and our addresses to be part of the public record. As I said, no disrespect to Councilor Morales, I just think that that may have been inappropriate. If we have to give our names and our addresses, why would an anonymous text be able to be read into the record? Pretty much that's all I wanted to say. I want to thank all of you for your service and the time you put into it, because I know that you do put a lot of work into what you do. Thank you.
I'm Ryan Servant, 40 Hillside Road. I had this great list of very courteous things I was going to try to speak in a very eloquent way, but after watching the town meeting from 2 weeks ago and watching what is unfolding here, we look like knuckleheads to anyone who watches those meetings. We really do. I am for the park for multiple reasons. One, $100,000 may fix a few potholes on Marsh Street, but it's not going to invest in our town. If you want to put that into the budget, what is your idea to bring more revenue into this town? Because fixing a few potholes is not going to work. You know, the other thing too is when we had the presentation earlier today on the zoning board, she said that we should develop the river waterways. And Councilor Mana said, but we need to find someone who would invest in that. Where would we ever find someone who wants to help invest in the town? My jaw dropped. We have someone who wants to invest in our town. Now, with the contingencies, when you do a real estate deal, you're so concerned about the environmental report. I picked up the phone. I called Chip, left a message on this Saturday. Guess what? He called me at Monday at 9 a.m. He had no clue who I am. I have no clue who he is. I said, do you have an environmental report? He goes, yeah. I said, are you going to provide it to the town? He goes, sure. Do you want it right now? And I said, no, I'm just a citizen. The first time I came here was talking about how there was lead in my meter. And you guys said, how did you figure this out, Ryan? I Googled it. I made some phone calls. You guys are dealing with too much red tape. If you want information, go get it. Last 2 weeks ago, Councilor Steves, you said this information is too little too late to the town manager. That's baloney. He answered every single one of your questions. Maybe you asked him in August, but before the vote, he gave you enough answers. There are contingencies. This is not spending the $100,000. This is just saying you're willing to do so. You can put a rider in that real estate that says, for $1, we will sell you this land, but it's going to pass with flying colors in the environmental report. I feel like none of you have bought real estate before. How is that possible? This is not spending the money. I feel like we're beating our heads against the wall. If you want to spend this money somewhere else, that's fine. This is not how we're spending the money right now. We just need you to get out of the way. Because otherwise, we're paying these great people to do commissions on zoning boards, on the master plans, and you're throwing the money away. Absolutely throwing the money away. Thank you.
Are there any other citizens who would like to talk on this issue? Or any other councilors who would like to talk on this issue? Okay. There's numerous points. I come from a fiscal responsibility side. The $100,000, along with other monies that we have, could easily be put into bids for grinding and resurfacing numerous roads like other communities do. Do you ever ask yourself how small little communities like Holland or others have better roads than Southbridge? There are ways that we can do this. We need to address them. And small amounts of money, 100,000 here, 100,000 there, can be addressed. I'm looking at this, in my opinion, for me, as a fiscal responsible decision. And maybe a year and a half ago, we were able to put aside some money thinking this would be a nice idea to get a grant. These grants come out every year, by the way. This one just came out late this spring. So the opportunities are always there. But we didn't know about the charter school situation. We did not know about the landfill situation ending as quickly as it is, speaking of landfill royalties. We did not know about a lot of things that have hit this community in the last 6 months to a year. So while we have concerns, environmental perhaps, or safety issues, we still have not actually gotten any information from our insurance company as to whether or not an open drop-off Riverside area would cost us more money. There are numerous other questions. We've asked lots of them, of course. But personally, I'm looking at this from a fiscal responsibility. And like others, I have spoken with a lot of people. A lot of business people, a lot of just basic people. I've had people call my house. I've had people email me. We can all say that over and over and over. I represent the people too, just like you do. And maybe the people I know don't necessarily want to come out and sit at this meeting. And I can assure you they're watching and take the hits. But sentiment on those I speak with, this is not the greatest idea at this moment. It's a nice idea. The timing, as Mr. Smick said, is not great. And certainly we have a lot of other parks and recreation areas that we should be really maintaining. And I applaud the fact that we have an Adopt a Park program. I applaud what we do in an effort to keep our playgrounds and our parks up to as good as they are at this point. I would point out that Deval Patrick offered us a park a number of years ago. It was a matching grant situation, and at that time we said we can't afford. That's a great gift that he wanted to leave with every city and town having a new park that he was willing to help pay for as his legacy. And we reneged on creating a new park because it was going to cost money. We did, however, I believe that was part of doing some of the handicap accessibility to West Street area and putting in a small handicap accessible playground for children there, because children are important. I have 5, raised them here in town. They played all the sports, just for the record. And so we have done things that have minimized the impact financially on this community and yet still ended up with results that were very positive to this community. Yes, we didn't do the little water sprinkler deal because of the excess money. However, we did support the state in their efforts to rebuild our community swimming pools and all. And while I had my doubts that we could afford them, and lo and behold, we couldn't afford to take it over like the state did, the state kept up that state pool. So now the children of this community can go at low cost or almost no cost and have swimming all summer long. I know it's not the river, they're not putting in a paddle boat, but it's what we can work with. I'm a firm believer of working within your means. That's how I was raised as a child, and I believe that this community has great potential. But when we have businesses, which I keep hearing, like SJC Drums, who just invested and stayed in this community on Mill Street, and they asked to have their sidewalks or their road fixed so that their very important company would be able to have a nice entrance to their property, and we don't have the money to fix that for them. Or when other manufacturing companies, as the town manager has stated before, have come forth and said, River Street, for instance, is abominable. There are ways we can make some fixes. Is it perfect? Do we need to have these $500,000, $1 million road projects? No, there are other ways out there that we really need to discuss in a DPW meeting, because other communities are doing it, and it may not be the best answer. Maybe the road won't last 20 years, but I bet we can get a good 10 or 15 out of some of the ideas that are out on the table. And I suggest we look into that and we save our money. So that's another topic for another day. But I'm telling you right now, with the state of way Southbridge is, I would gladly take this $100,000 and by a 2/3 vote reappropriate it to something else, to something that matters to the taxpayers and keeping up your properties, keeping up whatever it is we need to do. By one of the speakers, own admittance, the school system is in shambles. Where's the $1.5 million gonna go? It's nice to want a park. This is a small, have you walked it? It's a very small postage stamp area at the bottom of Main Street. What we need is development in the middle of Main Street. And while $1.5 million for a park behind Tassie's is not on board, that was part of a much larger plan, not just a little park that we're told by DPW will just be some vegetation removed and there it is. If that's the case, there won't be much going on there. So I look at this as a fiscal issue, and I have not been swayed, and I appreciate the sentiment, I really do. but I've not been swayed personally as to what we should do for this community in which we live, in which the taxes and the water and the sewer bills and everything just goes up and up and up. We need to mind the store and keep this money in-house and take care of what we already have. Anybody else want anything to say? Well, if there's no further discussion, we have a motion on the table and a second. And I guess we'll move to the vote, and we'll do it by roll call. So let me just be clear, it's been a long time. The motion on the table is to rescind the vote regarding the Waterside Park as taken December 4th. It was agenda item number 9. So that is the motion, to rescind the vote.
Just a quick question, Madam Chair. Does it require a majority or two-thirds majority?
Two-thirds.
Two-thirds without prior notice.
That's what I thought.
Councilor Manna.
Just to be clear, to rescind the vote.
Do you want to rescind the vote, or do you want that vote to stay?
Do I want the vote to stay? Okay, so if the vote stay, okay, yes, no. I'm confused, right, I'm voting
okay. Not to rescind, okay.
Vote is no. Councilor Morales.
No.
Councilor Nash. Councilor Steves.
No.
Councilor O'Clair.
No.
Councilor Carrasco.
No.
Councilor Clements.
No.
Councilor DePietro.
No.
Councilor McKenzie.
No.
8 no.
So the motion to rescind the vote that was on the table has been disposed of once, is no. It did not pass. And therefore, the vote still stands. Now, having said that, I'm going to make my statement again that I said at the beginning. I don't believe that the agenda item that was proposed for Wednesday's meeting, that was called by 3 councilors on Thursday, is valid. It's not significantly different than what we just did not rescind. It creates a park, accepts land, and appropriates money from a different source. I will finish what I'm saying. We'll finish. It appropriates money just from a different source.
You're discussing the motion that's already been voted upon, and you should not be doing that in open session. If you'd like to speak to it, I'd ask you to please come on Wednesday. Thank you.
I'm the chair, and I will go with questions for debate. And yes, thank you. Thank you, Councilor O'Clair, for that. So I would just point out that we've once again disposed of that motion, and I don't see the need for any further discussion. We've done this twice now. So, okay. All set?
Okay.
All right, moving on. Citizens Forum. Is there anyone who would like to discuss anything else that is not on the agenda? Please approach. Something's not on the agenda. We just disposed of that.
Yeah, you can. What's going on?
I don't.
Hi there,
I would
Chris.
ask that the council please refrain and go through the chair. Sir, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Chris Perry, 25 Hartwell Street, Southbridge. I just wanted to come up and thank the DPW for their work. I'm working down in the Global Village area on the corner of West Street and Mill Street, that kind of area there. And early in the morning, we had our first snowfall, so there's some good things about that and some bad things. I'm sure people would love to share that, but I'm just sharing a thank you to a gentleman named John and Dave, and of course the dispatcher, who in the morning when I called him, I said, look, I got ice on the sidewalk, I need some help over here. Public lands, or town lands, you know, they came and they cleaned it up real quick. They were there with like 5 minutes. It wasn't a big deal. So that's important to know as you're trying to figure out what do we do if we need something like that done and it's town property, and what do? We call DPW. That worked real well. There are some sidewalks, however, that I do want to bring up just one point, and you do whatever you do with it. And that is on some of the town properties, or some of the properties where there used to be houses. There's actually one on that corner. The houses are knocked down, but the town then is responsible for those sidewalks. And I think I saw a couple of those around town today as I was driving. I couldn't tell you where, because I've been all over the place. But I just want to bring that up as a point. And then also some of these sidewalks that are not getting cleaned, such as that actual corner, which my understanding is it's an estate. So nobody's taking care of that property. It's in state probate or whatever. And children walk down the hill there, where Mill Street and
Main Street come together. It goes up a hill. Do you know what I mean? Across from the gas station there. That whole hill, I see people coming down there with baby carriages like this, or you kids have to walk because they can't push you. So maybe the town needs to look into some kind of, there are fines that go out through the police department, of course, but maybe the town needs to look into some kind of, like, if we do that kind of work for people because they're not being responsible, maybe there's some kind of something the town can do for the cleanup that we do on those towns. So I just want to bring that point up. Thanks again to the DPW, Dave and the gentleman, and the operator, of course, at DPW that got him out there in 5 minutes. 5 minutes flat. Great.
Thank you for your words. Thank you. Mr. Town Manager, can you check in with some of what Mr. Breer's?
We've already talked about it. It's already been checked into.
Okay. Thank
Can
you.
I just ask a parliamentary question? Is it often that a councillor will ask for a rescind to vote and then vote no on that? Seems a bit strange to say I want to rescind that, but then vote against his own motion to rescind. That's not strange? Why would you want to re-vote on that and then vote no? I don't know if I should specifically ask Mr. Morales that. It seems a bit strange. Why bring it up now
I
and
can
then
tell
vote
you that
against
you
it?
can, I can tell you that parliamentarily wise, you can vote any way you want at any time. I've seen councillors go back and forth and vote up, down, and vote differently in different occasions. I can't speak for Councilor Morales. I just know, for me personally, we had a lot of discussion. But
So, Councilman, were you swayed in between when you called for the vote and then when you actually got to vote? Were you swayed differently? Because you voted no 2 weeks ago, and you called for the re-vote, and then you still voted no. So I'm just confused how that happened.
Correct. So I decided to wait till Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you.
is there anyone else who would like to address the council? Anyone else who'd like to address the council? Seeing none, we're going to move on. Okay, agenda item number 9, vote to confirm the town manager's recommendation to appoint Michael Loyne of Southbridge as an alternate member of the planning board for a 3-year term effective immediately through June 30th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Town Manager.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Mike, as I think most of you know, has been a long-term member of this community. He has 27 years in the civil engineering field. And until 2015, we actually ran Burton Engineering, Southbridge's office, for 12 years prior to switching careers 2 years ago. And I want to make that clear, he hasn't worked for Burton for the last 2 years, so he hasn't been working any town projects in the last 2 years. As always, I brought Mr. Loyne into my office to have conversation with him. I've known him very well for the 2 years that I've been here. I think he's an exceptional candidate for this particular position. My concern was not knowing much about his leaving Burton, is were there going to be any kind of conflict of interest. He assured me that that's not a problem. He hasn't worked with anybody in recent years, and that that's not a problem. At the General Government Subcommittee, let me just make sure that was right. P&D Subcommittee, some questions were raised, and normally I don't ask candidates to come here. They usually kind of get screened out in the subcommittee process. But in this particular occasion, I did invite Mike to come because some legitimate questions were raised. And when I went to review those questions and read newspaper articles, I had a difficult time understanding the issue and the issue of concern. I've since talked to Mike, and this goes to a newspaper article, I think it was in 2009, if I'm correct. There was some concern that Mike came before the town council and made some comments that turned out to be not true. And I wanted to ask Mike about that because I thought it was a legitimate reason for voting against Mike's appointment if for some reason he gave an untrue statement to the town council. After discussing with that issue with Mike, I'm much more comfortable that that was not the case. I can explain it, and again, Mike is here to ask the question. But the article kind of gave me the impression that Mike was working with some partners to develop a project up near the Casella landfill. It was a recycling kind of project, and Mike can specify more about it. And there was some question as to who the backers of that project were. As a matter of fact, a firm from, I think it was Europe or Great Britain or something, was, they were told at that meeting that that firm was backing it. It was later learned that that firm was bought out by this company. It was later learned that that was not true. And I asked Mike about that because Mike, in fact, said that at the meeting. As it turned out, Mike was not a partner in that firm. He was representing that firm, found out later that, in fact, you're correct, that he was lied to from the firm who gave him that information, and eventually didn't even get paid by that firm. But Mike is here. He at least resolved the issue in my mind, but I want to make sure that counselors, if they have any questions of Mike, he was here to answer those questions. So I'm comfortable with the result of the answer, but I want to make sure that each of you were, if you wanted to ask Mike, and Mike said he would make himself available to answer any questions.
Councilor DePietro?
Madam Chair, I just wanted to add my support, certainly from Mike. I've worked with him on many projects over the years. He's a stand-up guy, and I couldn't think of anyone more suited for this position. Thank you.
Anyone? Councilor Clare.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I'm the one that brought up a few of those concerns, specifically with the 2009, representation to the public. And I don't know, going through all of the Telegram and Gazette articles kind of reinforced those thoughts that I had, that this is not somebody that I'd want to bring forward to represent the community in my own conscience. And so I guess I'm curious as to whether or not there's some kind of compelling evidence or something that would ease those fears of both myself and, the people of the community that also would have reservations about this.
If I could, with that, I'd ask Mike to come up to address that. And that, Councilor, I wanted to clearly address your concerns because I thought, based upon the articles that I read, that they sounded legitimate. So I wanted to give you a chance to ask those questions and see if Mr. Lane could alleviate your fears or not. And that, again, I thought you gave me a legitimate questions and raised legitimate questions. I wanted to make sure that you had the opportunity to hear out potential answers. With that, Mike, could you kind of give an update like you did to me as to what those issues were?
Sure. For the council, Mike Loyne, live at 120 Howard Farm Road in Southbridge. You are totally correct. The newspaper articles had said things in the past. This was a situation where a company came to my office and says, we want to bring a recycling. It was powdered, I think it was called powdered impression powder impression molding. They use recyclables to make building board. It's a technology that's out of Europe. They had a PowerPoint, they had members, and it was a great, at the time, would have been a great fit for taking more recyclables out of the trash stream than Casella was doing or the town was doing. So I talked to them. They wanted us to do a site plan. We did some preliminary concepts, and then we came over to Town Manager Clark's office, and he is the one who asked that this group do a presentation to the council. So I actually, being a local contact, facilitated the discussion with the council on this whole process. It came down to where these people didn't have the rights to, didn't have the actual legal rights to use this process from England, but I mean, we don't do research on our clients that come to our office and ask that type of questions. So after that meeting, I think it was Linda Kokalis from Sturbridge actually was very instrumental, and she called me up and she did some research, and she's the one who brought me up to date on what was going on, and it was an eye-opening experience. In 27 years, never had a client that lied. So at that point, everything, I cut all ties, everything was dropped. And I just got caught up in a situation that, unbeknownst to me, it came out and it gave the appearance of misrepresentation. And in 27 years, I think anybody who knows my representation to any of the municipalities around here, I've always been straightforward, straight up, and I've always tried to administer any design plans that I had to the local zoning, the local subdivision control law, and the local site plan reviews. So I think what the planning board is charged to do is to make sure that the zoning is followed, to look at site plan and the regulations, the town regulations are followed, and the subdivision control regulations are followed. I have a lot of experience on the other side. I know where developers and everyone are going to try to slide things through, because I think I know probably Sturbridge's or Southbridge's zoning and subdivision control law by heart in a lot of ways. So that is a situation. Another question, well, in case it does come up, I was the odor, Burton Engineering was the odor control person for the independent monitor. When there was an odor, someone would call the 800 number and Burton would respond. Because I was local, I responded majority of the time. But my charge was to deal directly with the DEP. I reported any odor, any discrepancies, anything found on any smell or anything at the landfill. I reported it directly to the DEP and CC'd the town of Southbridge and CC'd Casella. So my charge was to go and just report the facts. I did that for 3 years, many times. In fact, if you look at the records, 99% of the time, if a call came in with an odor, there was an odor. I could tell you, and there were a few times where I went up there, and maybe because you had to respond within an hour, maybe because it took 20 minutes to a half hour, when I got there was none. But the couple times that happened, I reported it, but most of the time I reported the facts to the DEP. So I would ask your consideration to appoint me to the planning board.
Thank you, Mr. Lynn. Does anyone have any other questions? Councilor Steves?
I don't have a question. I just wanted to comment on a little bit of what he said and what Councilor DePietro said earlier. You know, having seen Mike when I was, even before I got involved in town government, I used to see him at planning board meetings and stuff like that all the time. And I thought it was interesting because he often would, quite frankly, he knew a lot more than some of the planning board members do. He could answer questions that they didn't know what they were asking. And I think that's a real plus to have that on our side of the table rather than representing, you know, somebody there just for the money.
Councilor Clare?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I just want to say thank you to Mr. Loyne for coming up and explaining. You know, there's a pretty common phrase, you know, where perception is reality. And even with the best intentions, what I'm seeing is, you know, throughout the timeline of that, you know, there was a really concerted push by Mr. Loyne for the access road, and we all know what ended up happening, you know, with the companies that were never actually coming to Southbridge. So thank you for coming up and speaking. You know, it looks like you'll probably be on the planning board, and I look forward to voting or to working with you, but I will not be voting for you tonight. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, great. All those in favor of Mr. Loyne's appointment? 1, 2, 3, sweet. Okay, opposed? So it is 8-1, motion carries. Welcome. Oh, excuse me, 7-1. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Loyne. Okay, moving on. Agenda item number 10, vote to adopt the zoning map amendment changing the zoning designation on approximately .98 acres, more or less herein identified on the Southbridge Assessor's Map 48, Lot 134, from its present zoning designation of two-family residential, 2F, to general business, GB, as recommended by the Southbridge Planning Board at its public hearing held November 15th, 2017. And this... It doesn't require.
Oh, you're right.
This is the second reading, as of December 18th. Now this is the second reading for that change. There will be 3 readings on this, so it does not require a vote tonight. It's just a second reading. If anybody would like to speak to that, though, now would be the time. Okay, very good. Moving on. The next item, number 11, is it a little lengthy? It is vote to refer the amendments to the Southbridge zoning bylaw, introducing a new definition in Article 3 and add Article 4 and Article 5 regarding marijuana articles and establishments back to the Planning Board to receive public comment at a future public hearing as follows. Section 300.471, marijuana establishment, a marijuana cultivator, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturer, marijuana retailer, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business for the recreational market. Amend Section 401, regulations applying to all districts to add Section 401.5, marijuana, and 401.5A, marijuana establishments, in accordance with the Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 3A2, all types of marijuana establishments as defined in Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 1, and as may otherwise be defined by Massachusetts law or regulation to include, without limitation, all marijuana cultivators, marijuana testing facilities, marijuana retailers, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related businesses shall be prohibited within the town of Southbridge. This prohibition shall not be construed to affect the medical use of marijuana as expressly authorized by the provisions of Chapter 369 of the Acts of 2012 and 105 CMR 725.000, as the same may be amended from time to time, or the ability for households to grow for personal use as defined under Mass General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 2. Amend Section 502, Table of Use Regulations, to add, quote, marijuana establishment, end quote, and prohibit in each zoning district under Sections 502.76 and 502.139.2, respectively. We then have a Table of Use of Regulations, and in that you will see excuse me, the 502.76 recreational commercial marijuana establishments. And under that, we have single-family, two-family, multifamily, retail business, general business. LI is light industry, heavy industry, and business opportunity district, and Central Core, excuse me. There's a lot of thank you, Councilor Steves. And those are all no's. Then under 502.13, manufacturing, processing, and related uses. Again, it's the same topics, recreational commercial marijuana establishments. And again, you will see no across the board from single family, two family, multifamily, retail, general business, light industry, heavy industry, business opportunity, opportunity district, and Central Core. Those will all be no's. So this is not an official reckoning of this particular amendment. This is for us to refer it to the planning board so that the planning board will then have public hearing and comment on. So we're not taking any official action approving this. It's just a matter of getting the process. The process needs to have a public hearing at this point, right, and that's what we are doing. Yep. Okay. Any questions or discussion on this matter? Or do you want to say anything from the General Government or Planning and Development meeting in terms of the minutes or anything? Are you looking? Okay.
Yeah.
Give you a second.
So I was trying to...
Councilor Steves?
I'll comment while you're looking it up, because obviously I was there too. And I came in a little bit late at that meeting, but we had some extensive discussion on both this item and the next item. The discussion kind of wove it together for obvious reasons. And so in this case, I think generally speaking, most of us in the room were actually had an issue with banning marijuana. Because of, and we recognize that there was a conflict between the vote in June to ban it and the vote last November to authorize it, and we still feel a conflict with that. Personally, I don't know which better represents the town's needs, but I mean the first one was a bigger vote, but the second one was more recent, so I don't know. But anyway. So we threw around some of the suggestions in here. I was the one who threw in some of the specific language about specifically to state or the ability for households to grow for personal use, blah, 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 just because I thought it was necessary to throw that in, and you'll see that in the text of the main code, the main bylaw momentarily, because just just going down the road in case somebody in the future starts to get a little overzealous about enforcement, just to remind them that, the law for personal use and the law for medicinal use are not subject to this kind of zoning. We have to zone to allow both of them. Well, actually, you don't have to zone to allow recreational growing under small quantities, because that's already law. But the medicinal use, we do have to go through a process to zone that, and we kind of started the discussion, but we haven't gotten that far yet. So it'd be interesting to see what that looks like when we get there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councilor Clare, you've got minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'll read the minutes that were under this agenda item. Mr. Comia opened the discussion and explained the reason for this agenda item. Due to the opt-out vote in June, the town is now obligated to amend zoning to reflect the will of the people. David Smick stated that he felt that the council should hold off on official action. The vote was confusing, where yes meant no and no meant yes. I pointed out at that time that the vote that passed in higher numbers during the presidential vote required a yes to allow recreational sales, whereas 8 months later, the town's revote required a no to allow recreational sales. Councillor Clements stated that the original ballot vote allowed an option for an opt-out, so perhaps the voters that voted in that election in favor were anticipating the allowance of an opt-out. Councillor Steves brought the discussion back to the suggested bylaws and added language to specify commercial sales versus recreational use. Ms. Ryan explained that members of the community felt deceived by this vote and that the town did not put enough information out to the community about this vote. Mr. Zotis pointed out that even the Telegram and Gazette reported the measure as passing when it didn't due to the confusing nature of the questions. Mr. Marchetti brought up the potential revenue side with the taxes and does not think that banning commercial sales and cultivation is right for the town. I had asked some questions about the voting process itself and asked why the state verbiage required an initiative petition for this type of opt-out, but Southbridge simply made a motion to ban at the council level. Mr. San Angelo explained that our legislative body has the power to put things on the ballot and that the state-level guidance is for municipalities that don't have such a process in place. A motion was made to recommend this agenda item to council, but it did not pass. It was voted 2-2, 2 for, 2 against. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone have anything else to say on this item? Okay. Apparently, Councilor Cresco is not here for this vote. So, all those in favor of referring this back to the planning board for public comment? Okay, and opposed? 1, 2. Wait, okay. You kept your hand up for, or did I miss it? Did not, you were up?
Were you a yes or no?
Were you a yes or no? Because
my hand was recognized, Madam Chair.
As a yes or a no? We're referring it back to planning board as a yes?
As a yes.
Okay, well, you kept it up when we were in the no's, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm seeing all the... Okay, so it was 2 opposed and 5 for.
I have 2.
Correct. Yes. Thank you. Motion carries. Confused with the hands. It's a hand count tonight. All right, moving on to the next agenda item. Now, yeah, you know what? I probably will like you to read. This is a first reading. I'll just preface it. This again comes across from what we're talking about.
Yes. This is the other agenda item. The item is to vote to amend the Southbridge Code of Bylaws, introducing a new article 7-509 marijuana, Chapter 7-509 1 Statement of Intent, 509.2 Definition, and 509.3 Statement of Bylaw as follows. 7.5, 7-509 marijuana, 7-509.1 Statement of Intent. On November 8th, 2016, the voters of the Commonwealth approved a law regulating the cultivation, processing, distribution, possession, and use of marijuana for recreational purposes, New Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 94G, Regulation of the Use and Distribution of Marijuana not medically prescribed. Under MGL 94G, Section 3A2I, allows a town or city to limit the number of marijuana establishments in the town, city or town, except that the city or town may only adopt an ordinance or bylaw or by a vote of the voters of that city or town if the ordinance or bylaw prohibits the operation of one or more types of marijuana establishments within the city or town. Whereas in our community, on June 13, 2017, the citizens of Southbridge voted 1159 to 989 in the affirmative to question 2, stating that the town shall prohibit the operation of marijuana retailers, as that term is defined in Mass General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 1, within the town of Southbridge. On June 13, 2017, the citizens of Southbridge voted 1150 to 990 in the affirmative on question 3, stating that the town shall prohibit the operation of marijuana cultivators, as that term is defined in Mass General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 1, within the town of Southbridge. On June 13, 2017, the citizens of Southbridge voted 1109 to 1029 in the affirmative to question 4, stating that the town shall prohibit the operation of marijuana testing facilities, as that term is defined in Mass General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 1, within the town of Southbridge. And D, on June 13, 2017, the citizens of Southbridge voted 1153 to 979 in the affirmative to question 5, stating the town shall prohibit the operation of marijuana product manufacturers as that term is defined in Mass General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 1, within the town of Southbridge. Section 7-509.2, definition. For the purpose of this section, a marijuana establishment shall mean a marijuana cultivator, independent testing facility, independent testing laboratory, marijuana product manufacturer, marijuana retailer, or any other type of licensed marijuana-related business for the retail recreational market. Section 7-509.3, statement of bylaw, prohibition of marijuana establishments. In accordance with Mass General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 3A2I, all types of marijuana establishments as defined in Mass General Laws, Chapter 94G, Section 1, and as may otherwise be defined in Massachusetts law or regulation to include, without limitation, all marijuana cultivators, marijuana testing facilities, marijuana retailers, or any other type of licensed, it says licenses, it should be licensed, marijuana-related businesses shall be prohibited within the town of Southbridge. This prohibition shall not be construed to affect the medical use of marijuana as expressly authorized by the provisions of Chapter 369 of the Acts of 2012 and 105 CMR 725.000, as the same may be amended from time to time, or the ability for households to grow for personal use as defined under Mass General Law, Chapter 94G, Section 2. This is the first reading.
Thank you, councilors. Councilor Manna.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. In regards to underneath the statement of intent in the parentheses where it says, New Massachusetts General Law, MGL, Chapter 94G, regulation of the use and distribution of marijuana not medically prescribed. That needs to be changed because doctors don't prescribe it, they recommend it, so they're not allowed. It's actually against federal law for them to prescribe it, so they give a letter of recommendation. So I would just ask that that word be changed because it's given the appearance that doctors prescribe that.
Council, you get Mr. Comia also, perhaps he has some input, but Councilor Steves, do you want to say something?
Okay, I personally think that's just the way the law is actually named. We could easily eliminate the issue by simply saying Mass General, for recreational purposes, new Mass General Law, Chapter 94G. And just leave it at that. And just eliminate the title entirely.
I mean, medical marijuana on the federal level is still a Schedule Class 1 drug, and
Yes,
it's against federal law.
Yes, it is.
Until they clear that up, that's a huge conflict right there, and it should be recommended, I believe.
Okay, Councilor Manna, what we'll do is ask Mr. Comia what he found for language in the state laws so that we can be consistent with that. Or, as Councilor Steve suggested, you remove it. But, Mr. Comia, our planner.
That law, as that law was passed, Chapter 94G was listed as that.
That's how it's stated?
Yes, so we can strike that because it does refer to Chapter 94G, which exists as its own. So
Right.
it's just another, it's a nomenclature.
Okay.
So if you'd like to strike that, we can.
Well, in Council Manna, if you read that, regulation of the use and distribution of marijuana not medically prescribed.
Prescribed.
Because you can't prescribe it.
Well, you can't prescribe it.
Just saying.
Right.
You know, so it makes sense in some ways. But your choice. This is a first reading for a reason, to take suggestions as to what we think this needs to be.
Could we strike that out, and just leave in the law?
The number?
The number for the law?
That makes sense.
Would you mind? I would
feel more-
suggest a motion then on that, perhaps. If you want to make a motion to amend.
I'd like to make a motion to amend that and strike out the wording and just keep the Mass General Law.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor? Unanimous, by present, 7. Motion carries. So the amendment will be changed. You'll change it, and then we'll do the next reading.
Yes.
Thank you very much. More questions?
Just one quick point. I had read it originally, but just when I said under 7-509.3, I caught it when I was reading it, but I just want to make sure we make the change. Okay, if we should make the motion, where it says, or any other type of, it says licenses, marijuana-related business, but it should be licensed.
I think that's just a typo.
It is. I just wanted to make sure we caught it.
Yeah, I'll fix that for the next reading.
Okay.
Very good. Okay. All right, then. Moving on. Councilors Forum. You're up next. Councilor Clare, start with you.
Oh, wow. We got there quick, huh? Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I don't have much this week. I just hope that I'll see everybody on Wednesday for the meeting at 7 o'clock here in council chambers. Thank you.
Councilor Morales.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you. I was able to attend last week in a SPIDA meeting, and I just wanted to publicly thank them for their work, helping our students in their program get through middle school and high school, and also that they're seeking for members that are willing to help out with new ideas, with new opportunities for these students. So I just wanted to, like I said, publicly thank them once again for their great work in our community for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you elaborate a little on the Aspira group?
Yes, and the SPIDA group is a non-profitable committee that help our students earn scholarships through their program. They basically have to work themselves through the program to earn scholarships for colleges. They also prepare them for applications for colleges. They have to do community service in the town. Mm-hmm. They have to do a bit of work from their part and efforts to actually be a part of the program. And they gotta, keep their grades up, and it's a nice program to have for our students to get the opportunity to have a group of people to help them get through college and scholarships and just that process to get them through, which is very hard, applying for these colleges and different grants and stuff like that. So this group of people take time out of their busy lives and make sure that our students have that opportunity.
Very good. Thank you so much for that. They've been around a while, and I've only heard good things, so yes. Thank you. Okay, Councilor Manna?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. I just want to wish everyone a very Merry Christmas. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilor McKenzie.
Yes. As I did last year, and as Councilman David, Living Good, thank you, has done in the past as well. I would like to read, since it is Christmas time, I would like to read a passage in Luke chapter 2, and may it be edifying to those who are those of faith. Now in those days a decree went out from Caesar Augustus that a census be taken of all the inhabited earth. This was the first census taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria, and everyone was on his way to register for the census, each to his own city. Joseph also went up to Galilee from the city of Nazareth to Judea to the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and the family of David, in order to register along with Mary, who was engaged to him and was with child. While they were there, the days were completed for her to give birth. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and she wrapped him in cloths and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. In the same region, there were some shepherds staying out in the fields and keeping watch over the flock by night. And an angel of the Lord suddenly stood before them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terribly frightened. But the angel said to them, "Do not be afraid. Behold, I bring good news of joy, which will be for all the people. For today in the city of David there has been born to you a Savior, who is Christ the Lord. This will be a sign for you. You will find a baby wrapped in cloths and lying in a manger." And suddenly there appeared with the angels a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God and saying, "Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace among men with whom he is pleased." I want to wish everyone, councilors, our town manager, and all of our citizens a very merry and blessed Christmas and a happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor DePietro.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kind of a hard act to follow there. In response to one of the speakers this evening that had suggested, and I was named and with several other councilors, that there's some kind of collusion, there's some kind of little secret backdoor team here or something. I was very insulted, very insulted. I vote my conscience. I vote for the citizens of this town, And sometimes I have to vote for what the citizens of this town, I think, by majority, at the polling booth have gone the wrong direction against themselves. But I was elected by the citizens, and I represent them. The more opportunity I have and time that I have to sit in the seat, I'm gaining more exposure to parliamentary procedure, and I'm becoming more engaged. I don't know if it's been other councils' experience, but you got to spend a year or so before you really get a grasp of how this whole procedure works. At least that's been my experience. My opinion on not just this one agenda item that was bouncing all over the place this evening, but on quite a few items. I see waste, and I'm going to start being more vocal about it. As far as the water park, folks, yes, love it. I'd love to have a water park. I'd love to have a lot of these things that are proposed that are their wants, they're not needs. You don't paint your house when your roof is leaking. And right now, the town's roof is leaking. It'll look a whole lot nicer with a water park and a painted front. But we really, I mean, honest to goodness, as well-meaning and as great an effort as I think this would be, I don't see a return on investment. I haven't seen a return on investment, and I challenge anyone to show me. And a lot of these monies that are spent, yeah, for beautification purposes and for things that, again, are not necessities. You take care of your necessities first, then you go for your wish list. My opinion, this water park is a wish list. It would be a wonderful thing. We don't have the money. Very soon, we're going to find out even further. We are not going to have the money. And we better start putting it aside now and getting ready for a rainy day. Is the only reason I was not a proponent of this. And that's my own mind. I haven't been swayed by any other councilor here. But when I first saw the dollar amount there and it was proposed to subcommittee, I said, this ain't gonna fly. There's no way this is gonna get through council. It's just not. As great an idea as it is, we can't afford it. And as much work as everyone's put in, the town manager and these other folks, I feel terrible, but I just can't support it. Nor do I intend to, nor have I been convinced any further this evening. Furthermore, it was mentioned that, I don't know the wording exactly, but it wasn't a very favorable comment about the chair. If anything, I think these folks should look back to a few council chairs prior, one of which also happened to be a female, and she would have thrown the gavel at some of these folks.
Yeah, all right, let's keep it civil here.
No,
I get it, but let's not go back.
In the chair's defense.
I appreciate your...
In the chair's defense.
I appreciate that, but please.
I think you give most people more leverage, or not the word, what's the word? Liberty. Than the procedure actually demands. If you're at fault with anything, that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. I just want one comment to your statement about parliamentary procedure. I want to thank, almost 9 years ago, Mr. Sotilli, Mr. Jim Sotilli. Imagine I'd be sitting up here saying that. It was him during my first ever debate to come onto council when he looked at me and said, "Are you planning on following Robert's Rules of Order? Because that's what's in," and I said, "Oh, well, of course, Robert's Rules of Order, absolutely." It's kind of a story I've told before. And at the time, I barely knew Robert's Rules of Order, but I fully intended, if that's what Charter said, and that I would follow him. And I comment that that's the same book that I've had for almost 9 years. It's been read and read and read, and I would recommend, as you all know, to read at least the revised version, the 100-page version, to get yourself up to speed on things. And I appreciate Councillor McDonald, former Councillor McDonald, former Councillor Smick for their input on parliamentary procedure, and others, many others. But didn't always agree with it, didn't always like it, but that's the rules. So, thank you for listening to that and for your comments. Councillor Steves.
Thanks to you, Madam Chair. I don't really have a whole lot. I just want to point out for people who are interested in what Daphne Politis was talking about earlier and the whole zoning process, if you haven't had a chance to comment on it, the zoning board, that zoning bylaw update committee is meeting on Wednesday at 2:30. It's kind of an odd time, but that's when the consultant can get here, basically. So those will always be in the afternoons, and this next one's the 20th. So you can participate and have some comments in there. And also, if anybody's interested, there's a grand opening for the Harrington Family Service Center on January 8th at 4 p.m. And lastly, there was something else I wanted to mention, and I forgot what it was. And that can be too important. Anyway, and I just wanted to say thank you for everybody who has participated, whether I agree with you or not. That's the way this process works, and I appreciate you coming up to comment. It's very important that we have people come up, whether we agree with you or not, and you have a chance to say things, and that needs to continue. And so I also would like to point out, just say Merry Christmas to everybody, Happy Solstice, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever it is that you do, I hope you have a great one. The next council meeting officially is, well, we've got the Wednesday one, and then you've got the Monday, January 8th at 7 p.m. here in the council chambers.
Thank you. So now we have agenda item number 15. Our people are dwindling, apparently. We've now lost Councillor Clare. Her things are here. Vote to enter into executive session according to the Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss landfill litigation if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on litigation position and the chair so declares, and to adjourn. So I do so declare, and we will adjourn from that meeting. So, do I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councillor Morales?
Yes.
Councillor Steves?
Yes.
Councillor Clements?
Yes.
Councillor DePietro?
Yes?
Councillor McKenzie?
Yes.
Councillor Manna? Yes. 6 yes.
Okay, so motion carries, and 6 of us will go into executive session, I guess. I don't know.